Obligatory, definitely do not try this one at home. In case you're curious how strong this magnet is, very strong. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Techbusters, the show where we test the most ridiculous PC gaming myths and rumors. Of course, disclaimer, do not try this at home. We are trained and licensed professionals, and also keep in mind that a lot of the components we are using to test these myths are already going to be recycled anyway, so no PCs were harmed in the filming of this video. It's mostly a true statement. Mostly.
Austin, can magnets kill your PC?
I remember as a kid, we got a school computer. And this was back obviously in the days of CRTs. I remember one of the kids in my class, like, you know what we can do? You take a magnet, you put it on the front of the CRT, and it starts to like discolor it, and it gets all like wonky and stuff. So that was my first experience with magnets and PCs.
I imagine that things are probably a little better off now than they used to be, at least.
This seems like an easy one to test. We just get a bunch of magnets, some PC hardware, and we see at what point we start breaking things.
I just want expense magnets on the company accounts.
Magnets aren't expensive, you realize. Basically, it's an excuse to play with magnets.
It looks incredibly innocuous. This is, to be fair, not a very powerful magnet. This is like a little desk magnet for like paper clips and whatnot. So just for reference right now, we're running this system at 100%, right? So it is 100% pegged on the CPU. We're hitting it with a fairly intensive workload. So if there's any problems, we should be able to notice it pretty quick. So I'm gonna run the magnet along the RAM and see what happens. This feels very wrong. I'm running it right along. Running it in between. I mean, it's definitely magnetizing to the graphics card, and it should be fine. Okay, that is a much stronger magnet. I'm gonna rip the power supply out. Oh, okay.
That's what they use to go magnet fishing.
So in case you're curious how strong this magnet is, very strong. Actually, I'm gonna try the exhaust fan. If I can stop the exhaust fan, that'll be a success. Ooh, I feel it tugging. Yep.
I mean,
how about the CPU fan? Oh, you hear that? Wait. Listen to this. So getting close to the CPU fan killed the fan. Oh, look at this. Okay, it did start back up, but actually the magnet is strong enough to kill that CPU fan. So this certainly could knock out a system, right? If I kill that CPU fan and you don't actually manually restart it, that fan will stop and it'll overheat. The hard drive is certainly something that I think is pretty susceptible to this. But
yeah, I think if we put the magnet here, that'll definitely kill the system. Okay, so we're reading and writing at 130 megabytes per second.
Okay. So I'm gonna count you down, okay? I'm gonna hit start, and you go ahead and get it as close as you can, okay? Ready?
Okay.
Set, and... Oh, it stopped. It immediately stopped. Yeah, that hard drive's toast. You just killed a hard drive. So a magnet will absolutely kill a hard drive.
It makes sense, mechanical moving pieces, right?
I think there's really only one thing left. I'm gonna get this close to the graphics card and see what happens. Watch my fingers if I lose them.
Ooh, it shut off.
I mean, it grabbed onto that GPU pretty hard. The system is still running though. Looks like it's coming up though. We got a disk check because Windows is like, uh-oh, I don't like that. I think this is no longer a myth. Powerful magnets, not regular stuff, right? There's lots of magnets in all kinds of like sort of PC hardware and everything we use, but powerful magnets around something like a computer, or I assume something like the inside of a smartphone, can and absolutely will cause major issues. Might not completely kill it immediately, but it'll certainly do damage to your hard drive. And I feel like if we got it close to something like our CPU or our RAM, it would just die. Like we would just actually crush it.
Austin, does mixing RAM equal worse performance?
Ooh, I don't think I've ever actually tried this. So usually the advice is if you're gonna have, 2, 3, 4 sticks of RAM in your system, you should have them all from matching manufacturers, matching speeds. Now, that's not technically necessary, right? So modern DDR4, it'll always default to a base speed.
Well, this isn't totally unreasonable because obviously hardware for some people might be hard to come by, or some people might just be scraping the parts for scraping the barrel for some parts.
Especially if you're upgrading like a pre-built or something, or you have some old memory, it might actually, if this works and we're able to get it sorted, this would be a really good and cheap upgrade to get yourself another 8, 16 gigs of RAM in your system.
So this one seems pretty straightforward. So to test, I've got myself a fairly high-end system. So we have not only a Ryzen processor, which Ryzen processors are typically pretty reliant on memory speed and configuration, but also we're using a very high-end one, a Ryzen 9 5900X. That basically means that we've got 12 CPU cores we need to feed with memory. So to start out with, I have a configuration that we would probably all use with a processor like this. So this is 32 gigs of core Corsair Vengeance RGB memory, and it is running in dual channel at 3600 megahertz. So this will serve as our control. Now the main test we're looking at here is the multi-threaded score inside of Geekbench, which is a score for this setup of 12,232. Now this does also make a difference for single core and a bunch of other stuff, but again, I want to have a fairly high-end representation of kind of like the worst case scenario here. So 1232, that's the number we're going to beat. Spoiler alert, we're not going to beat it. Now you might be wondering, what exactly have we done this time? So this is the worst case scenario. So instead of having 32 gigs of fast dual channel memory, we have a single stick of 8 gig 2133 megahertz memory, aka literally about the slowest possible memory you could put inside of a Ryzen system like this. Now it will be a surprise to exactly no one that this is slower, but I was actually surprised at how much slower it really is. This configuration with the Ryzen 9 5900X processor only delivers 65% the performance of our properly optimized setup. I don't think I need to be a math genius to figure out that's a lot of performance that you're leaving on the table. Now, to be fair, we also did run the test with the same Corsair Vengeance that we tried initially, except this running at 3600, so it's still single channel, but at least it's running at a more reasonable speed. And that only gave us 70% performance of running it in the properly optimized configuration. So if you are using a medium to high-end Ryzen processor, pretty much any Ryzen processor really, but especially some of these like higher end ones, and you're running a single stick of RAM, you're losing serious performance. So here again, we've done a little bit of an extreme comparison. So we have a 16 gig high-end 3600 megahertz stick of RAM paired with a very low-end 8 gig stick of RAM for a total of 24 gigabytes. The problem really here is going to be in the speed. When you're running mismatched sticks of RAM, they're always going to default to the lowest speed. I can't run one stick of RAM at 36 and the other one at 21. It doesn't work like that, right? They're really tied together. So with this set, I've actually defaulted to the base 2133 speed, which means that even though I've got my dual channel memory, I'm still only running at 77% the performance of running in the optimized configuration with 2 matching sticks of RAM. It's not really recommended from a perspective of the motherboard manufacturers and whatnot. Should work, maybe a random crash here or there, but probably more importantly, even though it is better than running in single channel mode, we're still losing a lot of performance not by running it at those higher clock speeds that at least some of our RAM is capable of. This video is sponsored by the new Rocket Cone Pro and Cone Pro Air. These are the latest in their legendary line of gaming mice, as they're not only incredibly light, coming in at 66 grams for the wired Cone Pro and only 75 grams for the wireless Cone Pro, that paired with Rocket's heat-treated glides make them slide like butter. Although don't slide them on actual butter, that seems like a bad idea. Underneath, they share the same 19,000 DPI owl eye sensor for precision, and they also have the AMO RGB support, which looks especially nice through the honeycomb pattern that you can see through the surface. That gives the mice the strength to survive through intense gaming sessions without sacrificing weight, and importantly, ergonomics of the cone to make it incredibly comfortable to play with. So if you're in need of a gaming mouse upgrade, definitely be sure to go check out the Rocket Cone Pro and Cone Pro Air at the link in the description, and of course, huge shout out to Rocket for sponsoring this portion of the video.
Now this one's not really a myth, we know this to be true.
Oh, okay, cool.
Can static kill your components?
Well, okay, so if you've ever seen a PC tutorial from the year 2012, they tell you to use your anti-static wristband and stuff. Here's a little spoiler for you. I have never, ever done that. Well, and I think this is one of the things that may have changed over time. I would wager that components are better shielded now than they were 10, 20 years ago, right? My big question is this. When it comes to working on or building a computer, how worried do you really need to be about static electricity? How long do I have to do this before I have enough of a static shock, you think?
Oh, they are just, wow. I just wore off half my sock, didn't I? Wait, I should really stop doing this. I'm really destroying my socks right now. What should I touch? So we have a graphics card in here, we have some RAM.
Motherboard.
I wasn't staticky enough. I'm not getting any static electricity. This is harder than I thought. Don't mind me. Ooh, I feel some static. I can feel like the hairs on my ears standing up. Okay, hang on. I'm no clown. That's all. That's all I have to say right now.
Oh yeah.
Ready?
Do it, do it, do it.
That's nothing.
So the side of the graphics card is sharp and I popped the balloon. That's not really testing a myth. Balloons will pop if you shove them inside PCs. Today I learned. I think we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what kind of electricity static really is consistent of, right? I assume it's going to be very high volts and very low amps, but what is that number? And is there a way that we can replicate it without socks on carpet and balloons? This is going to be a lot harder than I thought. There are a lot of variables involved with getting a static shock, so we're going to take all of that out of the equation and we're going to get a little bit more scientific. So what we're using here is a regulated power supply going into a Tesla coil, which we have a little bit of wire running right up to the RAM. Theoretically, this will deliver up to 50,000 volts directly to that memory, and that will be the equivalent of a very strong static shock. Now the system, as you can see, is running, so we've got a Cinebench render going on right now, so it's running at full capacity. Also, of course, don't try this at home. We have our friendly neighborhood Wes on standby with the fire extinguisher, so safety, it's important, kids. Don't burn your house down, trust me, not fun. Are we ready? And woo! The system's still running. I mean, system's stable. We can actually just do that again. I'm gonna crank it. Woo! It is still on. That is not stopped rendering. So, look, is this a definitive test? Absolutely not. But that is more electricity than I would ever have from a static shock. And we're running that, I mean, pretty consistently. Look, it's going straight into the memory, and it is not enough to cause a problem with the system. Let's do it around some of the VRM maybe. Ready and activate. Oh, look at that, flowing straight in there. Do you see that? I love that sound too. And the system is absolutely chugging away, no problem. What? You think you're gonna be done that fast? Clearly, you should never try this at home. But I mean, if we're gonna be a myth-busting duo today, we gotta be thorough, right? Right?
Sure.
If 3.8 million volts is not enough to severely impact this PC, I'm gonna be really surprised. Is everyone ready? Okay, we're gonna get one shot at this. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Nothing at all. Wow. Hold on a second. All right, 3, 2, 1. Oh, it did kill it. Okay, that did kill the system. All right, at least we got a crash. So the fans are cranking into overtime. Let me actually unplug the system and see if it comes back up. Because that was a really sustained burst. I mean, it's doing things. Wow! That is 3.8 million volts. Again, for context, static electricity is usually about 20,000 directly to the memory on this system. And it's coming up no problem. Look at that. Full 8 gigs of RAM showing up, no problem. Now, of course, when you're building a PC, you don't have the protections of the case and the power supply to keep you grounded, right? So there could still be an edge case where a ton of static electricity builds up and hits just the right part of a component. It's maybe possible, but I find it to be really hard to believe that a modern system would sustain serious damage with something as simple as a static shock. Stun guns, maybe a little bit more aggressive, but I'm legitimately really impressed. That is crazy.
A certain website may or may not have made a PC tutorial a couple of years ago.
Oh, let's do it.
Very infamous.
Yeah,
This person sent a gift to us, and he just said, use the whole tube of thermal paste?
Oh God. Okay.
You can't ever be too sure if your surface area is covered or not, right? I mean,
Ken, are you the kind of guy who wears 2 condoms and then that just completely negates the whole thing?
Why you wear 3?
Alternate thermal paste examples. What happens if we use toothpaste? I've never done it before. I've seen so many memes. I mean, look, this myth has a lot to it, right? Will it work? There's only one way to find out.
So testing this one should actually be fairly straightforward. So first we're going to do a control with the CPU running as it should. So this is a Ryzen 5 1600X running on an X570 motherboard, and we also have the Wraith cooler. So we're going to be running Cinebench. I've already run its stock, which our score is 6398. So that's the score to beat. So right now it's idling at about 31, 32 degrees. But while we were running the test, it topped out at just under 62 degrees Celsius. Ordinarily, when you're building a PC, you want to put roughly the size of a grain of rice on your processor. That's all you need. However, that's not what we're testing. This is what we're testing right now. Oh, that hurts so much. If you're ever in the scenario where your hand slipped or something, you should immediately wipe that off and call it a day. But it's not the myth we're testing. This is about to go absolutely everywhere. Oh, I felt it squish. Ew. Oh my God, that is disgusting. That is actually disgusting. I've got the cooler on. I actually don't see that much thermal paste leaking out. So running the Cinebench test again, this time with way too much thermal paste, almost exactly the same. We were within 1 degree of the temperature, and it's 64.23. So I think it's safe to say that too much thermal paste, while it's certainly not a good idea in terms of cleanliness and of just making a mess of things, now comes the real test. What happens when we take all that sweet thermal paste away and replace it with toothpaste? This is a terrible idea. Ooh, that smells good.
This is definitely gonna make it run cooler because of all the minty freshness.
I'm just gonna go for it. Oh, that just looks, that's gross. You know what actually is kind of weird? It's like warm toothpaste because the CPU is still warm from our benchmarking. It's like a little bit of a different aroma. All right, here goes nothing. It's nice knowing you, little CPU. I'm gonna put the cooler on now and ask questions later. And with that, our toothpaste is installed. I've gotta say, just like with the thermal paste, maybe I didn't use enough. It's actually not really squirting out. Let's actually fire up Cinebench and see what happens with this CPU temperature. Let's remember that with the optimal conditions, using thermal paste the way it's intended, we saw about 62 degrees. So our final temperature looks like it's just under 74 degrees. So we went from 61, 62 to about 73, 74 degrees. So say 12 degrees Celsius, but our score, exactly the same, 6,412. We lost 0 performance going from thermal paste to toothpaste. I think long term, there's no way this toothpaste doesn't dry out. There's no way this toothpaste might corrode the metal. I mean, there's a lot of problems with this as a long-term solution, right? I mean, I think we gotta say that this is not a myth. This is actually a real thing. You can cool your CPU with toothpaste. You just probably shouldn't, but I guess you can.
I don't know why anyone would do this, but
great start.
I think this is something that people have, in their morbid curiosity probably thought of. Can you wash your PC components in a dishwasher and use them as long as you dry them thoroughly?
Putting it in a dishwasher, first of all, no soap. Soap seems like a very bad idea.
I have a feeling if you just take those components that we wash, let it dry out, I think it would work. I mean, why wouldn't it work?
Hello and welcome to Austin's Kitchen Vlog Corner, where today I'm going to be expertly washing a motherboard. You know what you need on YouTube is a guy in his kitchen trying to tell you that you should wash PC components to make them faster. The top, this seems like the smart move. No, I don't do it like this, do I? This is so stupid. Why am I doing this? I was hoping to avoid the sort of stronger stuff on the bottom, but I don't think it's gonna work. Goodbye, motherboard. It was nice knowing you. This is such a bad idea. Oh, it's running. All right, it has been over an hour now, and let's see what we've got inside. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna look fine, right? Oh, wow, it's so warm. Oh my God, it is absolutely soaked. It looks fine. Nothing is missing, nothing has fallen out. I mean, it just seems like it's just washed. All right, so now that the board has had a day to dry, we have our motherboard set up on the test bench, and there's really only one thing for it. Do we see any signs of life? I don't know. This one's gonna be sketchy. Turn on the power, oh, that's a very good sign. I turn on the power supply, we have LEDs. So at least something's happening. If there's any signs of life here, I almost am gonna consider this to be a success. Ready, and, ooh. Nothing, I'll try to jump it. That should be working though. Nothing. So, I think it's safe to say that you should not wash your PC components in a dishwasher, and that this is a dumb idea.